The story of Hurricane Katrina is one of profound tragedy and systemic failure, yet it also reveals the resilient spirit of New Orleans. The hurricane stands as a monumental moment in 21st century Black American history, not just because it was a natural catastrophe of devastating force, but because it exposed deep-rooted neglect and racial injustice toward the city's predominantly African-American, low-income communities. This dual calamity has inspired multiple major documentary projects to mark the 20th anniversary of Katrina's fury, with acclaimed filmmakers Spike Lee and Ryan Coogler each producing their own series. But here's where it gets controversial. Watching Spike Lee's new 3-part documentary, Katrina, Come Hell and High Water, which launched on Netflix to coincide with the anniversary week, raises the question of how much new ground it really covers. Many viewers might find it overlaps significantly with Ryan Coogler's Hurricane Katrina, Race Against Time, released just a month earlier on Disney Plus and National Geographic. Both projects rely on similar footage and feature many of the same interview subjects, which somewhat dulls the impact of Lee's offering by comparison. Regardless of this overlap, the story itself remains absolutely vital. Hurricane Katrina, a Category 5 storm, the highest rating on the scale, struck New Orleans on August 29, 2005. The evacuation order was issued late, and many poorer residents simply had no means to leave. New Orleans is uniquely vulnerable, sitting largely below sea level in a bowl-shaped geography. While floodwalls and drainage systems were in place, they proved inadequate against the storm surge. The catastrophe led to widespread flooding across entire neighborhoods, resulting in 1,392 confirmed deaths and thousands more displaced within their own city. What's perhaps most infuriating is the slow and insufficient response from authorities. Local agencies were unprepared, and the federal administration under President George W. Bush appeared indifferent to the disaster's severity and the needs of its victims. Compared to Coogler's furious and detailed documentation, Lee's Come Hell and High Water takes a more emotional and elegiac approach. Rather than laying out a precise timeline or deeply dissecting the structural vulnerabilities, Lee focuses on conveying the horror of the rapidly rising floodwaters and the blatant racism that influenced how the aftermath was portrayed and managed. For instance, as starving survivors were forced to take supplies from abandoned shops, media narratives quickly labeled these desperate acts as looting. This criminalization of Black victims, casting them as threats to order, starkly contrasts with how similarly affected white communities might have been treated. Interestingly, these perspectives were not absent from Coogler's series either, making it arguable that watching Race Against Time might cover much of the ground of the first 2 episodes of Lee's series. However, Lee's final feature-length segment is where his documentary truly shines. It offers a rich oral history of New Orleans in the 2 decades following Katrina. Drawing on voices like actor Wendell Pierce and jazz musician Branford Marsalis, figures deeply connected to the city and its survivors, the film catalogs an ongoing parade of injustices that continued well after the floodwaters receded. For example, the city's unique cultural identity was systematically suppressed during rebuilding efforts. Insurance companies and banks aggressively reclaimed what they claimed was owed, while federal rebuilding funds were disproportionately allocated to more affluent areas, often based on previous property values, not necessarily the communities hardest hit. Public services faced steep cuts, Black teachers were laid off, and many middle-class Black residents relocated to other cities like Atlanta or Houston. The documentary also touches on rising crime rates, the expansion of privatized prisons, and gentrification that reshaped historically Black neighborhoods into predominantly white ones. These critical topics are presented rapidly, making the overall message clear. New Orleans has endured waves of devastation not only from nature, but also from systemic forces undermining its recovery and diversity. Yet the film's pacing leaves the viewer wishing for deeper exploration of each issue before moving on. Additionally, some editorial choices, such as flashing key phrases on-screen from interviews as subtitles, come across as slightly gimmicky, undercutting the seriousness of the subject matter. Despite these critiques, Spike Lee is keenly perceptive about the endurance of a city's spirit and culture through adversity. He concludes on an uplifting and defiant note, celebrating how New Orleans refuses to be erased or reshaped into a model community that sacrifices its identity for approval or conformity. Come Hell and High Water ultimately serves as both a solemn tribute to what was lost and a hopeful affirmation that although New Orleans will never be the same, it will never disappear. So, what do you think? Does Lee's approach offer a fresh perspective? Or does the overlap with Coogler's documentary dilute its impact? How do you feel about the portrayal of systemic failure and racism in the disaster's aftermath? Are we seeing a full reckoning with what happened, or are key stories still left untold? Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Katrina, Come Hell and High Water is currently available to watch on Netflix.